by Roald Dahl, Chapter 7, Frizzled Like a Fritter. All the women, or rather the witches, were now sitting motionless in their chairs and staring as though hypnotized at somebody who had suddenly appeared on the platform. That somebody was just another woman. Well, the first thing I noticed about this woman was her size. She was tiny, probably no more than 4.5 feet tall. She looked quite young. I guess maybe about 25 or 6, and she was very pretty. She had on a rather stylish black dress that reached almost to the ground, and she wore black gloves that came up to her elbows. Unlike the others, she wasn't wearing a hat. She didn't look to me like a witch at all, but she couldn't probably not be one. Otherwise, what on earth was she doing up there on the platform? And why, for heaven's sakes, were all the other witches gazing at her with such a mixture of adoration, awe, and fear? Very slowly, the young lady on the platform raised her hands to her face. I saw her gloved fingers unhooking something behind her ears. And then she caught hold of her cheeks, and she lifted her face clean away. The whole of that pretty face came away in her hands. It was a mask. As she took off the mask, she turned sideways and placed it carefully upon the small table nearby. And when she turned around again and faced us, I very nearly screamed out. That face of hers was the most frightful and frightening thing I'd ever seen. Just looking at it gave me the shakes all over. It was so crumpled and wizened and shrunken and shriveled, and it looked as though it had been pickled in vinegar. It was a most fearsome and ghastly sight. There was something terribly wrong with it, something foul and putrid and decayed. It seemed like literally to be rotting away at the edges. And in the middle of her face, all around her mouth and cheeks, I could see the skin all cankered and worm-eaten, as though maggots were working their way in there. and then there are times when something is so frightful you become mesmerized by it and you can't look away. It was like that right now. I was transfixed. I was numb. I was magnetized by the sheer horror of this woman's features. But there was more to it than that. There was a look of serpent in those eyes of hers as they flashed around the audience. I knew immediately, of course, that it was none other than the witch. The Grand High Witch. I knew also why she had worn a mask, because she could have never moved around in public, let alone book a hotel with her real face. Everyone who saw her would have run away screaming. "The doors!" shouted the Grand High Witch in a voice that filled the room and bounced around the walls. "Are they chained and bolted?" "The doors are chained and bolted, your grandness," answered a voice from the audience. The brilliant snake eyes that were set so deep and the dreadful, rotting, worm-eaten face glared unblinkingly at the witches who sat facing her. "You may remove your gloves," she shouted. Her voice, I noticed, had that same hard metallic quality as the voice of the witch I had met under the Concord tree, only it was far louder and much harsher. It rasped, it grated, it snarled, it scraped, it shrieked, and it growled. Everyone in the room was peeling off her gloves. I was watching the hands of those in the back row. I wanted very much to see what those fingers looked like and whether my grandmother had been right. Ah, I could see several of them now. I could see the brown claws curving over the tips of the fingers. They were about 2 inches long, those claws, and sharp at the ends. "You may remove your shoes," barked the Grand High Witch. I heard a sigh of relief going up from the witches in the room as they kicked off their narrow, high-heeled shoes. And when I got a glimpse under the chairs of several pairs of stocking feet, square and completely toeless. Revolting they were, as though the toes had been sliced away from the feet with a carving knife. "You may remove your wigs," snarled the Grand High Witch. She had a particular way of speaking. There was some sort of foreign accent there, some sort of harsh and guttural, and she seemed to have trouble pronouncing the letter W. As well as that, she did something funny with the letter R. She would roll it around and around her mouth like a piece of hot pork crackling before she spit it out. "Remove your wigs and get some fresh air into your spotty scalps," she shouted, and another sigh of relief arose from the audience as all of the hands went up to their heads and all of the wigs, with the hats still on them, were lifted away. There now appeared in front of me a row upon row of bald female heads, a sea of naked scalps, every one of them red and itchy looking from being rubbed by the linings of the wigs. I simply cannot tell you how awful they were, and somehow the whole sight was made more grotesque because underneath those frightful scabby bald heads, the bodies were dressed in fashionable and rather pretty clothes. It was monstrous. It was so unnatural. Oh, heavens, I thought. Oh, help. Oh, Lord, have mercy on me. These foul, bald-headed females, these child killers, every one of them are here, and I'm imprisoned in the same room, and I can't escape. Pause it.